All right, welcome to the daily market recap for Tuesday, October 14th. In today's video, we'll be going over the action of the indexes, the liquid leaders, industry ETFs, then end the video with long and short setups going into tomorrow, like we do with every daily recap. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want my market takes throughout the trading day, along with a live stream at the open and any trades that I personally take, you can sign up for the Market Pulse Discord using the link in the comment section. Starting off with the NASDAQ, pretty crazy day. We had that big distribution day Friday, kind of ending the acceleration phase. Big gap up on Monday as Chinese tensions seemed to ease over the weekend with some Trump tweets. And then today started with a big gap down, accelerated move lower, didn't undercut Friday's lows, had a nice big rally, went green at one point, and then right at the end of the day, another Trump tweet brought the market down a little bit, ending the day down 0.66% and below the 5, the 10, the 20-day moving averages. So you can guess on which way that this trend is going to break. And I wouldn't argue because there's just so much volatility at this point. I see a lot of mixed signals, good signals, bad signals. I am just going to take this a day at a time, but the expectation is more volatility to come. S&P 500, similar action. Didn't quite, actually, that got to the bottom of the support gap, got to Friday's low, bounced, was first to reclaim yesterday's closing price over the NASDAQ, rallied back through the 5 and the 10, but also closed a little bit weaker, only down 0.13%, but still under that 20-day moving average that I like to kind of keep as a risk on, risk off indicator. Now, IWO, the growth stocks of the Russell 2000, different story here. Higher highs, higher lows, new 52-week high, almost a new all-time high if we go back to February of 2021. We're just 3% or so away from there. And if you take a look at what stocks were moving today and yesterday in the market, it's been small cap stocks. Small cap, low revenue, more speculative, the better. And this continues to rip higher. So, really, until this loses the 20-day moving average on a closing basis, like we did on Friday, trend is still up, risk is still on. But we are starting to see some real volatility here. ARKK, some weakness coming back into a gap zone, bounce at it, reclaim the 20-day moving average and a secondary support gap, but still under the 5 and the 10-day moving averages. And then IBIT as a way to track Bitcoin. Some weakness out of Bitcoin with, well, on here, a little gap down, rally up later in the day, but still just a secondary new high fail. So August 13th, we broke into new highs, immediately failed from that level. October 6th, broke into new highs. And then from that point, we've been pulling back pretty aggressively. So risk on signal with IWO, risk off signal with Bitcoin, and then mixed signals with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. So let's take a look at the liquid leaders, another way to kind of gauge whether institutions have a risk appetite or not. Let's sort this by price percent change today. And whoops, we will start with Rocket Lab, one of the stronger stocks in the market. ASTS, another monster stock in that same theme. Today, pulled back into the 5-day moving average. Not quite the 10-day. I was really looking for a 10-day undercut and a support gap undercut here at 6150, 6160 as a spot to add or get into that stock. But got there, bounced, reclaimed the 5-day, and then ended the day up 4%. Lots of strength in that theme. MP, another very strong theme right now is precious metals, up 3.8%, a new all-time closing high. Pulled into the 5-day, didn't even get to the 5-day moving average, and then closed stronger. BE, new all-time closing high as well. Higher highs, lower lows, but then nice rally to end the day up 3.8%. AMD, a little bit of weakness here. More so in the closing range, but that's because a lot of semiconductors, well, not a lot, a few semiconductors have started to act a little bit weak. We have NVIDIA right at the 50-day moving average and the support gap here. This kind of is starting to look like a failed breakout attempt, which is not what you want to see out of kind of the king of AI. Other stocks within that theme, A-Lab was down 20% today, lost the 50-day moving average on a big pickup in volume. And CRDO, which was looking like it was shaping up here, little uppercut and fail of this pivot, also lost the 50-day moving average. So some relative strength within the theme from AMD, holding the 5-day moving average, but the theme itself just pretty volatile at this point. LEU, a theme that has been extremely strong, is nuclear and uranium stocks, holding the 5-day moving average on a closing basis. Kind of came into this area, but closed relatively well, only down 0.7%. KTOS, after the big reversal on October 9th, has still been choppy and to the downside. First test of the 20-day moving average, usually a good risk reward spot, and we bounced there so far. We'll see if we continue to manage to close above that area. Tesla, not ideal action here. So we have this gap down from October 8th to the 9th. We uppercut and fail last Friday. Makes sense. The market was weak on Friday, so you can't hold too much against Tesla there. Had that weak close under the 20-day. And then my favorite thing after a weak close under a key moving average is an unfilled gap up. Now, the flip side is also true. The thing that you don't want to see after a strong day where you reclaim key moving averages and come right back into a resistance gap is an unfilled gap down. That's exactly what we got today. And while the NASDAQ was able to close that gap and many individual stocks were able to close those gaps, Tesla was not able to. Still closed red on the day, down 1.5%, back under the 5 in the 10-day. Now we're starting to build kind of this resistance gap or gap down shelf, which is not ideal action. It's not the worst in the world. We do have earnings coming up in about 8 days, October 22nd. So maybe just some chop until then. Robinhood, first time coming into that 20-day moving average since the S&P 500 inclusion announcement. Really good action from that point. This is kind of the first test of that stock. Usually, first test of the 20-day moving average after new highs is a good risk reward spot. We'll see if Bitcoin can find some traction. This is seemingly a little bit correlated with the cryptocurrencies. So a little gap up, viable versus today's low. We'll see how that goes. Then NBIS, first unfilled gap to the downside since we started this uptrending move. Closed slightly below the 5-day moving average, but did so on less volume than the previous day. I'm not too concerned about this, but the sooner that we can close this gap down zone, the better. Getting into the industry ETFs, we'll sort this by price percent change. And home builders, which has been extremely weak, pulling into the 200-day moving average, finally found a bid today up 3.2%. Lower volume than the previous day, though. Did reclaim the 5, testing that 10-day EMA and resistance gap. We'll see if we can push through that tomorrow, or if this is just kind of a dead cat bounce. But either way, home builders still has a lot of work to do. NLR, this is nuclear and uranium, another new all-time high, but on another pickup in volume. Usually, you don't want to see volume on ETFs or individual names spike as you continue to make new highs. It's usually a sign of kind of FOMO buying, retail buying into that extension. It's great if it's like a one-time breakout buy, like back in here, May 23rd. That kind of a breakout of a base is very, very positive action when you have that type of volume. But as you get extended, you don't want volume to pick up as you continue to push higher. UFO, this is a new industry ETF on my list. Thank you, Riley, for that. This is more of like a space type stock. ASTS, PL, Rocket Lab, Garmin, VSAT, some really strong names in here. I'm going to spend some time tonight to kind of go through and familiarize myself with that theme. But UFO, right near new closing highs, little undercut and reclaim of the support gap under the 10-day moving average. Really great action so far. XRT, retail ETF that has been extremely weak. Two really nice bounce back days into the 50-day moving average. Lower volume on that move. So is this a lower high, just uppercutting those key moving averages before it rolls over? Or was this the low? We'll take it day by day. Couple other stocks or themes to focus on. Solar stocks continuing to build higher lows here. The financial ETF, XLF, lots of banks reporting. JP Morgan was one of them this morning. A little gap down to start the day, came into the support gap, found a bid, reclaimed yesterday's high, reclaimed the 5-day. At one point, reclaimed all the moving averages and then squatted a little bit towards the end of the day. So hopefully this is the low in that pullback and we could start to build higher lows here because we definitely want financials on our side if the market's going to continue higher. XME, this is the metal and mining ETF. Another sign that like this extension is getting a little overdone. Volume really picking up here as we accelerate Starting to go parabolic here. A couple like unfilled gap ups would, for me, kind of mark the top or look for a reversal. But until we break and close under the 5-day moving average, momentum is on the side of the metal stocks. Um, I just don't know if I would want to buy them up here already extended. ARKG came into the 20-day moving average. This is the genomics ETF, still in that big base. So some volatility makes sense as long as we hold that 20-day and the gap at $29, 28.80. I'm fine with that. IGV, the software ETF, undercut Friday's lows, not great action. Another gap down, close under the 5, the 10, the 20-day moving average. This is another theme that we want above the 20-day as we're in a stronger market. GDX, gold miners, continues to chop at all-time highs. Haven't seen a blow off move quite yet in this. We had a couple days where volume came in to the downside, but unless we're under the 20-day, I still think this has room to go higher. And then MSOS, the cannabis ETF, continues to build that cup and handle on that 20-day moving average. Volume tightening up here, so expect directional move from this point, either to the upside or the downside. But given the price action and some of the accumulation bars, my guess is to the upside. Before we get into the long and short setups, just a reminder that we are in earnings season now. So make sure that you know when the stocks that you own or the stocks that you're trying to buy are going to be reporting earnings. Tomorrow, before the market opens, we have ASML, Progressive, Dollar Tree, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, SF, SYF, a couple other banks. After the close, United Airlines. None of these really catch my radar. But Thursday, before the market opens, we have our first semiconductor. Well, I guess ASML, I believe, is a semiconductor stock, but TSM, much larger semiconductor company, reports Thursday before the open, and then some more banking and financial stocks Thursday and Friday. So, getting into the long setups, we'll sort this by dollar volume. So, most liquid to least liquid. First one continues to stay on the list is BMNR. Today was buyable on the little undercut of the support gap down here. I really am trying to stay patient on the entry because I think the undercut of the 50-day and the support gap down here at 50-50, 50-60 is going to be the best risk reward spot, especially because we've shown some weakness in crypto. We've seen some gap downs in this name. So whenever you have overhead gaps, I always want to buy it on a shakeout or an undercut and rally, whatever you want to call it. And when you have multiple and some weakness in the theme, kind of the more weakness, the better, instead of trying to buy on strength. So really looking for an undercut of the 50-day moving average, come into this gap zone. That would be buyable versus like a 2% stop. HIMS, healthcare names today weren't super strong. And I know this is like healthcare, retail adjacent, whatever. If the market's going to continue higher and we're going to see like continued speculation, this is one of the few like quality bases left, and it's not a perfect base by any means, but it's not an extended name, and it's a name that can get extended in a very short period of time. We've had multiple supports at the 200-day moving average. Now, pulling back into that support gap today, nice bounce there. Taking out today's high and the 20-day moving average is one spot to look at. I would rather see a pullback into the support gap, like a higher low pullback into the support gap, so I can manage my risk against the low today and maybe a little bit against the 50-day moving average. But this would be a smaller position just because some weakness here, not the cleanest setup, but it's not extended. One of the few stocks that's not extended yet. Rocket Lab, kind of went over this with the leaders, just looking for a pullback into that 10-day moving average. That's the support gap low right around 61.80. PL, awesome move here. I am kicking myself for missing it. Highest volume ever, or highest volume at least in a year on September 8th, earnings gap up 47%. Did an offering that got soaked up with closes over the 5-day moving average. Pulled back into the HVC. This was the buy point right at 965. Just completely missed it. You could have taken it the next day, September 17th, through the previous day's high. Just beautiful action, rising over the 5-day moving average. Now we're pulling back into the 10-day for the first time, into that support gap. Through today's high on strength is buyable. Undercut and reclaim of the lows of this pullback is buyable. those are the two spots that I'm most like interested in watching. If the market itself has another pullback day, then this 20-day moving average and gap zone at 1380 becomes a spot to watch. CRISPR, CRSP, undercut and reclaim of the support gap of the 20-day moving average today. Just looking for a higher low pullback into that same area, 6617, manage risk against today's low. SEDG, solar stocks, continue to show strength. This one, perfect undercut and reclaim of the support gap low today. Then a really strong close back over the 20, the 10, the 5-day moving average. Just looking for another retest of that. That would have to be on some general market weakness. STNE, this is the stock still in the stage one base, so not extended, pulling back into the 50-day moving average. We also have a support gap here. So looking for an undercut and reclaim of that. I like that during this entire pullback, we haven't had an unfilled gap to the downside. So just some kind of organized selling down to the 50-day moving average. First time you test the 50-day is usually a good, after making 52-week highs, is usually a good risk reward spot. When that lines up with the support gap, even better. So undercut and reclaim of that would be the buy spot. Low of the day would be the stop. TSEM, semiconductor name that gapped down into the support gap low, bounced and reclaimed the 10-day moving average and the support gap high. Just another kind of pullback, especially with semis kind of starting to act a little bit weaker. If that can pull back into the support gap low, into the 20-day moving average, right around 70, 75, that's the spot to get in. Manage your risk with like a 3% stop. CLPT, big volume, September 24th, over the 5-day moving average on all of these closes, then expansion, more closes over the 5-day. Finally, we came back into the support gap, undercut and reclaimed it. Today was probably the buy point. It probably goes just from here. But if it comes back in for a higher low test of that $25 spot, that would be buyable versus today's low. And finally, we have APPS. This is a thinner name, so make sure you size accordingly. But a name that's had these multiple highest volume ever gap up on earnings, like one, two, three. We're starting to build out its stage one base. Multiple, like, I mean, this is a massive sell off from $97 down to $1. If something's going to pull a Carvana, like, I would never try to, uh, never mind. Don't even, uh, I didn't say anything about Carvana. We shouldn't use one example as a stock that, like, that we can come back from. All I'm saying is we've seen some really massive volume on these earnings gap ups. We finally have the 200-day in an uptrend for multiple months at this point. The 50 days back in an uptrend. We've had a sell-off post earnings, post to this most recent earnings that got absorbed, now pulled back to the 20-day moving average. A higher low pullback into the support gap at 625. That would be buyable versus today's low. And onto the short setups, which at this point I'm getting pretty focused on. First one is Rigetti. Everyone's been trying to short the quantum names. I've shorted IONQ a couple times and made a little bit of money, would have made more money going long them. But RGTI is really starting to set up for this parabolic short. We're not quite there yet. If you take a look back at MSTR and SMCI, I did threads on those yesterday on X. I'll post that in the comments. But at this point, we still haven't seen the highest volume ever on Rigetti. Yesterday, we had the highest dollar volume ever with the 25% move up. Today, we had like one strike down into the 5-day moving average, like one minute bar sell off. That got absorbed. We reclaimed the daily VWAP, and then we rallied higher. I think this could be ready tomorrow. What I would want to see here is a big gap up, like 10%. When MSTR topped, it was a 13% gap up over a psychological level, over $500. There's no round number here that would be like a psychological level to gap up of. Um, but if we get that like massive 10% gap up, the loss of the daily VWAP would be the first entry point. The loss of the daily low would be the second. Then the green to red move would be the third. I would try to build exposure to the short side with traction and manage my risk against the high of pre-market. If the stock reclaims the VWAP, I don't want to stay short. If the stock breaks over the previous high from pre-market, I don't want to stay short. If you're going to be shorting these names, like you have to be very active with your positioning and be willing to admit if you're wrong. Like the fact that this company does not make money doesn't mean that it can't go way, way higher. And at this point in these parabolic moves, the revenues do not matter. Nothing matters except for human psychology. And at this point, everyone's still trying to short them, myself included, right? We're talking about a potential short here. But the thing is, you can't stay stubborn. If it starts to work against you, get out, stay on the right side of the daily view app. That will keep you paper cuts if it goes against you. And if you look back at MSTR's parabolic short, all of the price action was under the daily view app once it broke. So for me to take the short, I would have to see a big gap up tomorrow morning. The higher, the better. Lose the daily view app and then roll over from there. And you want to see just massive volume coming in as it's rolling to the downside, not just one minute bar, but bar after bar after bar. You should see massive volume capitulating lower. I wouldn't be surprised if we got another like 25% move up tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we get the gap up that kind of tops it, just because of how clean this price action has been. Like very, very structured, pull back into the 10-day, very, very structured over the 5-day, little distribution day, October 10th, gap up, like not super extended when it comes just to the eye test. Percentage wise, we've gone from 15 to about 60, so almost 300%. We can go a lot higher still. So again, like these are tricky. If you don't trade parabolic shorts, this is probably not the one to start with. But it's going to be my main focus going into tomorrow. Same kind of ideas. IO and Q. I love that this started to show some weakness. Yesterday, we took out the highs, and what you don't want to see after just taking out the previous highs is a gap down. That's exactly what we got. It was on way less volume than the previous day, which makes me think these quantum names still can go a little bit higher, but it's the step in the right direction that momentum is coming down on these names. Like from this high to this high, not much room. From this high to this high, not much better. So out of the two, IO and Q, if you're not like into parabolic shorts, IO and Q through today's low, that would be a much cleaner and easier setup. And then you manage your risk against the daily view app. QBT, probably even better, one of the like weaker, more speculative names in that theme. Today, uppercut and failed exactly at the low part of a resistance gap. This one's not overly extended at this point. Just looking for a gap down, opening range break versus today's closing price as the trade there. Some other parabolic shorts, UAMY. I took this today. This was kind of exactly what I was looking for with Rigetti. Gap, 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 gap. Like you want to see just unrelenting gaps. You want to see volume peak. We had highest volume ever, and then today highest volume ever. Um, Pre-market, and we'll go into this because not the monthly. This is kind of what I want to see out of Rigetti pre-market here. We gapped up, we had all of this trading, and then we never took out pre-market high. With these parabolic shorts, SMCI, Rigetti, they don't, or SMCI and MSTR, they didn't take out the pre-market highs. We kind of just stalled for like 1 minute, and then immediately we saw sellers to the downside. We had a bounce because the rest of the theme was so strong today, but overall it acted relatively weak. Um, and you can see just massive, massive volume coming in here today. Just looking for a gap down and then opening range break to add to that short. And then just whatever the high of the day is would be my stop on the ad. Um, where is the other one? UUUU. This one is starting to get there. Not quite ready. You could use another gap or two to the upside, but we're really starting to see volume pick up. We're starting to get extended here. Price action is getting very wild. We've got 3 gap ups out of the last like 6 days. One more gap up and like an explosion in volume where you get like a full bar, something like this would really set up the gap up and then reversal on Thursday. I think this is still like one day away. Um, Getting to some non-parabolic tops or parabolic shorts, Carvana. Big distribution bar on October 10th. We've lost the 50-day moving average that supported it about 7 different times on the way up. Today, we did get supportive action at the support gap. Retail was strong overall, but look at the volume on the last 2 days of bounce. Very, very little. Just looking for the rally to continue into the 10-day moving average around the 357 spot, so I can manage my risk with a stop above the 50 and the 20-day EMAs. SSRM, this is another metal and mining. So if metal and mining itself, like the ETF, is overextended, the weaker names in that theme are ones that we can start to focus on. And I also think that is this in Argentina? No, it's US. Never mind. But weaker name, kind of pulling back into the 20-day bounce there. The volume on the bounce just incredibly weak. Just looking for a breakthrough today's low, stop at today's high for that trade. DFDV, just kind of sitting on the shelf. A break of that 1480 spot to the downside is shortable. Stop above the key moving averages, the 5, the 10, the 20-day. ZEPP, this is a name that's gone from $2 up to $60. Had a big distribution day on Friday, down 20%. Starting to churn a little bit without any momentum, and this is a momentum name. Break through the support gap low at 48.30 would be the short. Stop above the 20-day moving average. And then the last one, MSTR. We covered how Bitcoin is starting to have a little bit of trouble. Well, Bitcoin's having a little bit of trouble. MSTR is having a ton of trouble. And this is the parabolic short. This was on November 21st. This was the best trading day of my career. Pretty aggressively shorting this one. So go back and study that if you're looking to short parabolic moves. But after that, we've never made a new high, while Bitcoin has made multiple new highs. We put in this entire stage 3 top after a big stage 2 uptrend. Now we've tested the 200-day once, tested it twice, 200 days in a downtrend. You have the 200-day, the 50, the 20, the 10, the 5, all in the correct order to short. Weakness today, and a gap zone to work with. Just looking for a little bit of a rally back into the 5-day moving average towards today's highs, manage risk against the 10-day moving average there. That's going to be the daily market recap for, what is it, Tuesday, October 14th. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want my market takes throughout the trading day, along with the live stream at the open and any trades that I personally take, you can sign up for the Market Pulse Discord using the link in the comment section. Have a great night, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.